I'd love to talk about the power of heartbreak today. Heartbreak is one of the most powerful initiations we go through as human beings. It strips us down, it shatters the illusions we've carefully built, and it forces us to feel, to really feel. And in a world that teaches us instead to intellectualize, to move on, distract ourselves, heartbreak demands presence. It cracks us open. It brings us back to what is real. It brings us back to reality. And sometimes heartbreak is loud. It's a scream, a door slamming, a moment where everything changes in an instant. Other times it's quiet. It's a slow ache, an unraveling, a realization that love, at least the way we hoped for it, was not enough to keep us. I want to share a story here, one of those heart-shattering moments, for two reasons. One, because I think it's important to share what is true for us in our own experiences. And two, because I found in my life and those that I work with that we can either take these experiences as initiations and integrate them into our lives and create a sense of wholeness and better understanding and cohesiveness, or we can deny them, invalidate them, degrade them, pretend they aren't real. And in those cases, I found usually we'll find ourselves in the same situations over and over again, the lesson kind of begging to be looked at and listened and integrated. Or we can find ourselves getting smaller and smaller because we are learning to move away from life. And there was a moment after a particularly heart-shattering breakup where I walked into my office. I smelled a scent and felt suddenly that my partner was there. All of these memories popped into my mind, even though they hadn't really been in my office much. It was just the smell that hit me. And then their presence was there. I took a beat. And I let those feelings impact me and influence me. For someone who may be like you, who maybe like many people, has learned to be less feeling throughout time, it was an act of bravery to really feel this all the way through. It's interesting how scent as a sense is so deeply impactful. It's such a visceral, memory inciting experience. One minute you're fine, and the next minute you're crying over your Cheerios because the new candle in your room smells remarkably like your loved one's robe. And it is a special and excruciating kind of discomfort to grieve people who are still alive. Scent specifically is one of the most primal ways we remember. Unlike the other senses, which have to travel through different parts of the brain before we even register them, smell actually has a direct line straight to the limbic system, the place where our memory and our emotion live. So the olfactory nerve bypasses logic. It doesn't wait for permission. The scent can unravel you in an absolute instant. It can bring you back to a childhood kitchen, a lover's skin, the way someone once held you, or the way that they didn't. It makes sense then that grief would have a scent, that love would have a scent, that heartbreak would linger in the air like perfume on a jacket you can't bring yourself to wash. And maybe that's why scent can be so haunting. It reminds us that some things are still alive inside of us, even when they're long gone. And maybe in some ways that's a kind of mercy that we don't have to remember everything with words, that some things, the things that matter most, are etched into us, living in the body, waiting for the right moment to rise to the surface again. So we can listen, so we can transmute. I remember an event in the Bay Area, an ongoing Grief Friday show, and it's called You're Going to Die. And one of the nights where I went there, it wasn't about people who had passed, which usually it is about death and dying. But it was about the death of relationships, and it was beautiful and heart-shatteringly sad. The MC hugs the people if you go over 5 minutes, which is really funny and sweet. It's a kind of ritual of care, and it's a small act of saying you matter, but also like keep it stepping. And it reminds me of intimacy because it is an act of intimacy in an intimate moment of people sharing what they've lost and sharing what we usually don't talk about on a day-to-day basis. So the act of a kind of embrace after that seems comforting and maybe for some also very not so comfortable. That brings me to this idea of intimacy in its various forms. There is a kind of intimacy that stays, that remains, that's consistent enough to see us in our ugliest moments, and it's still there. How blessed we are when we get to experience that. And there's the kind where there's nowhere to hide because maybe you live in the same house, or maybe you're away somewhere together, or maybe you work together, so you can't really say, okay, see you later. Depending on your particular brand of attachment strategy, namely meaning if you run more anxious or avoidant, disorganized, or secure, if you lean into more security at times, then you may get more silent when this happens, when there's overwhelm in the system, or you may get shrouded in shame, or you may get enraged, or all of the above. And this is a very human experience because all of us have what is called an upper limit of intimacy where it becomes a little overwhelming and we need our own attention or attention from a different area. And because we aren't taught this, for a lot of us, we'll just feel everything all at once. It's overwhelming, it's too fast. And instead of slowing down to inhale and exhale, we might say the most awful thing we can think of just to make the person go away. And if it's not that extreme, it can also be things where there's light pushing away, turning away. We don't listen to their bids for connection. We try to create distance because we've learned over time as humans, a lot of us, especially in a Western culture, that it's quite frightening to say what is true. And that's one of the reasons why I love somatic work, because we can learn to say, wow, I feel a lot of tightness in my body right now, and I feel like I need some movement on my own. And it can be a loving thing, that boundaries can be an invitation to deeper connection when they honor both people. It's harder to say, I'm so scared right now. It seems harder to say that than maybe to blame the other person or to go to more of a black and white place. And it makes me feel into all the times we hide from each other, all of us. All humans tend to do this, instead of saying, the problem is you. What would it be like to say, to have such inner clarity and intimacy with oneself that we could say to a loved one, every time we get emotionally close, I think about how if I keep going down this path, you're gonna hurt me. And you're gonna hurt me in a way where I won't know how to put the pieces of myself back together. And I made a pact never to love someone more than they love me again. So instead of risking annihilation by love, I numb myself with endless work or alcohol or scrolling on YouTube or social media, or I have sex with somebody else, or I get attention from elsewhere. I make decisions that keep me away from open-heartedness. And if we were to say that, when we do say that, there can be this opening to heart flourishing. It seems as if everything is about connection. If we're really bone deep honest, life is about connection. And often I wish we were all more honest about this. In order to do that, we need to be more honest with ourselves, with our feeling selves. Not in the way where we're saying we're too much or they're too much or we're not enough or they're not enough, but in the way where we might say, when they ask us if they look great in a shirt and we don't want to lie, you could say, no, you don't look especially amazing in that shirt, but I am especially attracted to you. If you have that level of honesty there, if you really want to honor yourself and them, or maybe in a more existential way, really sharing, hey, you know what, after I grabbed a sandwich for lunch today, I thought about running onto the train tracks for a split second, but I don't actually want to. It was a fleeting thought that made me wonder if there's anything in my life other than my body that might need to die. Anything in me that I'm ready to let go of. Maybe it's my shame, maybe it's my rage, maybe it's an old memory that's running my life. Maybe it needs to be held enough for it to release. And then we look at them and we ask, what did you have for lunch? What would it be like to have these snippets of sobering existence where we could outstretch our arms, our bids for connection? Even though I try to remind myself at least once a day that time is a construct, that the clock ticks, but soul time is the real time, time still has a kind of trickstery way of controlling how we move in the world, right? And who we move with, how we do it. And I wonder if turning towards our hearts and being companions with them and being true companions with others is also about making time a collaborator. To stop fighting with reality and to learn how to live with it. So I want to offer a little self-connection practice here, a guided moment to come back into yourself, an invitation to take a breath in, maybe let it out slowly, letting yourself really land here in this moment and noticing where your feet are, noticing where your back body is, noticing where your body might be holding on to some tension, maybe in your jaw, maybe in your arms, maybe in your shoulders, and seeing if you can court the tension just a little bit to see if it can soften even just 5%. Imagining that wherever you are, however open or broken or whole or bursting your heart feels, that there is a version of you, maybe younger, maybe older, who's gently placing a hand on your shoulder, maybe placing a hand right over that beating heart of yours, saying, whatever you are holding, you do not have to hold it all by yourself. May our heartbreaks be a teacher. May they teach us where we've hidden ourselves, where we've avoided intimacy, where we long for connection, where we still need to heal. And through it all, we come back to this moment, to ourselves, and to each other. I'm grateful that you're here and that you're alive and that you're feeling. And I want to end today with a poem from John O'Donohue called For a New Beginning. In out-of-the-way places of the heart, where your thoughts never think to wander, this beginning has been quietly forming, waiting until you are ready to emerge. For a long time it has watched your desire, feeling the emptiness growing inside you, noticing how you willed yourself on, still unable to leave what you had outgrown. I watched you play with the seduction of safety and the gray promises that sameness whispered, heard the waves of turmoil rise and relent. Wondered, would you always live like this? Then the delight, when your courage kindled, and out you stepped onto new ground, your eyes young again with energy and dream, a path of plenitude opening before you. Though your destination is not yet clear, you can trust the promise of this opening. Unfurl yourself into the grace of beginning. This is at one with your life's desire. Awaken your spirit to adventure. Hold nothing back. Learn to find ease in risk. Soon you will be home in a new rhythm, where your soul senses the world that awaits you.